Maxwell Grayson didn't like being late. In 20 years of business, he had built an empire on precision, discipline, and impeccable timing. His group of companies, a network of 7 branches across the country, ran like a Swiss watch. Every meeting, every contract, every handshake was calculated down to the minute. This morning promised to be pivotal. Representatives from a major investment fund had flown in from New York specifically for negotiations about expansion. $30 million, new markets, going national. Everything Maxwell had been working toward for the past 3 years. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Metropolitan Hotel. Being late was not an option. At 8:30, Maxwell stepped out of his mansion, buttoning his jacket. The September morning greeted him with soft sunlight and a gentle breeze. Perfect weather for a perfect deal. His driver Eric was already standing by the black Mercedes, punctual and composed as always. "Good morning, Mr. Grayson," Eric greeted him, but his expression was unusually tense. "Something wrong?" Maxwell caught the anxiety in the driver's voice before he even spoke. "Boss, we have a problem." Eric spread his hands apologetically. "The car won't start. I already called a mechanic, but he says it's the electronics. Needs diagnostics. At least 2 hours." Maxwell looked at his watch. 8:35. Just over an hour until the meeting, and the drive took at least 40 minutes with traffic. "Call a taxi, immediately. Executive class." Maxwell's voice was calm but firm. Eric already had his phone to his ear. "Already ordering, Mr. Grayson. I'm sorry, I checked everything last night. The car was working perfectly. Technology breaks down. It happens." Maxwell waved his hand, cutting off the excuses. "What matters is the solution." 7 minutes later, a silver Toyota Camry with taxi markings pulled up to the gate. Maxwell grabbed his briefcase and headed to the car. Eric opened the door, and Maxwell froze for a second. Behind the wheel sat a young woman. This was unexpected. Maxwell was used to executive taxi service in the morning hours being experienced middle-aged men who knew the city and knew when to stay silent. But here, a woman in her 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and attentive brown eyes. "Good afternoon," she turned when Maxwell got in the back seat. "The Metropolitan Hotel, correct?" "Correct," Maxwell nodded, taking out his phone. "Try to avoid traffic." "I'll do everything possible." There was no fawning in her voice, only professional confidence. The car pulled away smoothly. The woman drove confidently, without jerks or unnecessary lane changes. Maxwell noted this in passing. A good driver is immediately apparent. He immersed himself in his phone, reviewing the final edits to the presentation. The first 15 minutes they drove in silence. Maxwell valued this. Not all taxi drivers understood that a passenger might not want conversation. But when the car got stuck in traffic on Madison Avenue, he looked up and caught the woman's attentive gaze in the rearview mirror. "I rarely see women driving executive class," Maxwell said quietly, more to fill the pause. "Rarely, but it happens." She turned on her signal, skillfully changing to the right lane where traffic was moving slightly faster. "It's work, like any other." "How long have you been driving?" 10 years, 8 of them professionally." Her voice was even, without unnecessary emotion, but Maxwell caught something else, a slight bitterness perhaps, as if behind this phrase hid an entire story. "Did you go straight into taxi work?" he asked, not understanding why he was interested. The woman was silent for a moment, then shook her head. "No. I used to work as a driver for a large company. Corporate transportation, business trips, stability, benefits package. Everything proper." "Why did you leave?" She was silent again, and Maxwell was ready to return to his phone, deciding he'd touched a sore spot. But she spoke, and her voice became quieter, more careful. "I didn't leave. I was fired." "For what reason?" "Officially, violation of discipline. Actually." She fell silent, as if weighing whether to continue. Then sighed. "Actually, I was fired by the branch director's wife. Maxwell looked up. Now his attention was fully on the conversation. The director's wife? Does she have such authority? Directly, no. But when you have influence and connections, you don't need authority. Weariness sounded in the woman's voice. She told her husband. The husband told HR. HR found a reason. Simple as that. And what did you do to turn the director's wife against you? The woman looked in the rearview mirror again, and their eyes met. In her eyes, Maxwell saw not resentment, but rather a weary understanding of injustice. I accidentally saw her lover, she said simply. Maxwell froze. The traffic cleared, the car moved faster, but he no longer noticed the road. Accidentally. Completely. I was delivering documents to the head office, stopped at the mall. I needed to pick up a package. And I see, in the parking lot, a taxi is parked, and a woman and man are kissing in the back seat. I didn't pay attention at first, but then I recognized her. It was my director's wife. She often came to the branch. I drove her a couple of times. And what did you do? Nothing. The woman shrugged. I turned away and went about my business, but she noticed me. Apparently our eyes met for a second, and 3 days later I was called to the director's office and told I had been rude to clients. They made up witnesses, drew up a report. I tried to explain, but it was useless. I was fired in 2 days. Quick, Maxwell noted. Very quick. Too quick for an ordinary violation, she nodded. But I didn't argue. I understood it was pointless. When people with influence are playing against you, it's better to just leave. Maxwell listened, and the fragments of a strange mosaic began to fall into place in his head. He asked the next question almost mechanically, but already sensing that the answer would change everything. And what was this company called? The woman said the name. Maxwell went cold. It was his company, his group of companies, one of the 7 branches he personally oversaw and was proud of. He slowly straightened in his seat, thought, trying to assess the information. The woman had worked as a driver in his organization, in one of the branches where he rarely visited, at most once a quarter for scheduled meetings. They really couldn't have crossed paths personally. But this was his business, his people, his responsibility. And someone among the director's wives was so influential that she could fire employees at will. Do you know the name of this man? The lover? Maxwell's voice now sounded different, harder, more demanding. The woman shook her head. No, I only saw him for a few seconds, but he was distinctive, tall, athletic, dark hair, and a tattoo on his neck. A flame tongue, I think. Hard to forget something like that. A tattoo on the neck. A flame tongue. Maxwell exhaled. This description fit only one person in his circle, a person he trusted, whom he considered a partner, whom he'd let into his business 5 years ago when he needed investment and connections. Anton Siegel, his partner. But what did the branch director's wife have to do with it? Maxwell tried to remember who headed the branch the woman had named. Carl Norwood, a competent manager, about 40, worked at the company for 3 years. And his wife? Maxwell didn't remember her face, but he knew for certain that she was friends with Jenna, with his wife. They attended corporate events together, went shopping together, talked on the phone. Jenna had mentioned once that Elena Norwood was a smart woman who understood business, that she gave her husband sound advice about work, and now it turned out that this Elena was meeting with Siegel. The branch director's wife's lover was Maxwell's own partner. And Jenna. What did Jenna have to do with this? The question hung in the air, but Maxwell wasn't ready to voice the answer even to himself yet. The car stopped. They had arrived. The Metropolitan Hotel, the woman said, looking straight ahead. Maxwell looked at his watch. 9:45, 15 minutes to spare. He took his briefcase but didn't rush to get out. What's your name? He asked. Vanessa Sinclair. Vanessa, I have a strange request. Maxwell took out a business card, wrote his personal cell phone number on the back. Don't discuss this story with anyone, absolutely no one, and call me this evening. I want to talk with you in more detail. Vanessa took the card, looked at it, then at Maxwell. Surprise flashed in her eyes. You're Maxwell Grayson? The CEO? Yes. She went pale. I didn't know. I just told. You told the truth, Maxwell interrupted her. And this truth might be very important. Call me. Do you promise? Vanessa slowly nodded. I promise. Maxwell got out of the car, paid through the app with a generous tip, and headed to the hotel entrance. But his thoughts were no longer on the upcoming negotiations. They were on how a random car breakdown had just opened a door for him into a world whose existence he hadn't suspected. A world where his wife might be connected to betrayal, where his partner was playing a double game, where honest people were fired because they accidentally saw something they shouldn't have seen. Maxwell went up to the conference room, greeted the fund representatives, laid out the presentation. The investors were serious, asking precise questions, studying the numbers, demanding justifications. Usually Maxwell felt like a fish in water in such situations. Numbers, facts, strategy, his element. But today, something had changed. He answered clearly, provided the necessary arguments, demonstrated growth charts. Outwardly, everything was going perfectly. The investors nodded, took notes, exchanged meaningful glances. The fund director, a gray-haired man with a penetrating gaze, even smiled when Maxwell showed the 3-year forecast. Impressive, he said, especially considering you started small. Maxwell nodded, accepting the compliment, but throughout the hour-long negotiations, one thought pulsed in the back of his consciousness. This wasn't random gossip from a taxi driver. This was a thread. And if he pulled it hard enough, he could unravel the entire ball. When the meeting ended with a handshake and a promise to send final terms by the end of the week, Maxwell went down to the hotel lobby and stopped by the window. The city lived its usual life: cars, people, bustle. But for him, something had broken this morning. Broken not just in the company car, broken in the picture of the world he'd considered unshakable. Maxwell took out his phone and dialed Owen Malone, the head of the company's security service. He answered after the first ring. Owen, I need to meet with you. Today. Urgent and confidential, Maxwell said, looking at the flow of cars below. Understood. Your office at 3? Works for me. And Owen, prepare access to all surveillance cameras from branch number 3 for the past 2 months. A pause. Did something happen, Mr. Grayson? Possibly. We'll discuss it at the meeting. Maxwell put away his phone and went outside. The question was only one thing. Was he ready for what he would discover at the end of this thread? And what would change in his life when he got to the answer? The meeting with Owen took place at exactly 3 p.m. The head of security entered the office with his usual imperturbability, a man who had seen a lot and was surprised by little. Maxwell gestured to the chair opposite the desk. Sit down, Owen. Serious conversation. I'm listening, Mr. Grayson. Maxwell briefly outlined the situation: the random breakdown of the company car, the taxi ride, the conversation with the woman driver, the story about being fired from the branch, details about the director's wife and her lover, the meeting in the mall parking lot. She described the man in detail. Maxwell looked Owen straight in the eyes. Tall, athletic, dark hair, and a tattoo on his neck, a flame tongue, bright, red-orange. Owen looked up from his notebook. That could be Siegel. Exactly, Maxwell nodded. Anton is the only one in our circle with such a tattoo, too distinctive a feature to be mistaken. Owen silently took notes without interrupting. Maxwell continued. The woman, the taxi driver, her name is Vanessa Sinclair. She worked as a driver at our branch number 3. She was fired on July 27th 4 days after she accidentally saw the branch director's wife with a lover in a taxi. The dismissal was processed for a fabricated reason, allegedly rudeness to a client, and very quickly, without investigation. "Witness cleanup," Owen said quietly. "Looks like it. I need a full investigation of this story." Maxwell leaned closer to the desk. "First, pull up surveillance recordings from the Galleria Mall parking lot for July 23rd, approximately 2 to 3 p.m. Look for a gray Kia Rio taxi. If Sinclair is telling the truth, there will be Elena Norwood and a man with a tattoo there." Owen wrote it down. "Second, check everything about Vanessa Sinclair's dismissal. Grounds, documents, reports, who specifically initiated it. Talk to the branch HR people, but carefully, so as not to raise a fuss. Find out who was pushing for the decision." "Understood." Third, pull up all data on Anton Siegel's visits to the branch over the past 3 months. When he came, who he met with, how much time he spent, through the access system and surveillance cameras. "All right, anything else?" Maxwell thought. "Yes, check phone contacts between Siegel and Elena Norwood. If she had a corporate plan, there should be call records left." "Will be done." Owen closed his notebook and looked at Maxwell. "How much time do I have?" 2 days maximum. I need facts, not guesses. If there's something serious there, I need to know for certain." "Understood. I'll start working right now." Owen stood, but turned at the door. "Mr. Grayson, if your suspicions are confirmed, are you ready for the consequences?" Maxwell nodded. "Ready. Better to know the truth than live in ignorance." "Then see you soon." Owen left, leaving Maxwell alone with his thoughts. Vanessa called at exactly 8 p.m. Maxwell was sitting in his office looking at the city lights. After the meeting with Owen Malone, he hadn't been able to concentrate on work. The head of security had promised to provide initial results by noon tomorrow. The phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Hello? This is Vanessa Sinclair. You asked me to call." Her voice sounded uncertain. "Thank you for responding. Where are you now?" "At home. Just finished my shift." "Vanessa, I need to meet with you in person. Talk in more detail about what happened at the branch. It's important." She was silent. "I don't want to harm anyone. I just want to work quietly." "I understand. But if what you saw is connected to my company, I must know the truth. The full truth." Maxwell spoke calmly but firmly. "Let's meet tomorrow morning. In a neutral place, if that's more comfortable for you." "Where?" "The Clock Cafe downtown. Do you know it?" "Yes." "Does 9 a.m. work for you?" "It works." "Excellent. See you tomorrow, Vanessa." Maxwell didn't like acting blindly, but right now he had no choice. If Siegel and Norwood's wife were connected, if Jenna was aware of this connection, if Vanessa's dismissal was an attempt to cover tracks, then this wasn't just about a romance. This was about something bigger, about influence, about control, about access to information. Maxwell remembered how 6 months ago Jenna suddenly started taking interest in company affairs. Previously, she'd never meddled in business. She was content with the role of a successful entrepreneur's wife, with her social events, shopping, and spa salons. But 6 months ago, she started asking questions. Who works in the branches? Who are they planning to promote? What new contracts are coming? He'd thought then that she was simply maturing, wanting to understand what he did. Now, these questions looked different. Maxwell stood and approached the window. Below, car lights flickered, people hurried home after work. Somewhere out there, in this huge city, Vanessa Sinclair was driving her taxi, a random witness who could destroy his world, or save it. The next morning, Maxwell arrived at the cafe 10 minutes before the appointed time. He chose a table in the far corner, from where the entire hall was clearly visible, but which remained sufficiently private for a serious conversation. Vanessa appeared exactly at 9. She was dressed simply, jeans, a light jacket, hair down. Today she looked younger and more vulnerable. Good morning. Maxwell stood and nodded to the chair opposite. Thank you for coming. Will you have coffee? Yes, thank you. Vanessa sat, putting her bag on the neighboring chair. Maxwell called the waitress over, ordered 2 Americanos and croissants. When they were alone, he took out a notebook. Vanessa, I want you to tell me everything from the beginning, in detail. When exactly did you see the director's wife with this man? Where was it? What happened? Vanessa took a deep breath and again told about what she saw in the smallest details. Are you sure it was Elena Norwood? Absolutely. I knew her well. She often came to the branch, sometimes asked me to take her to stores or the beauty salon. We even talked several times. She seemed like a pleasant woman. And the man you saw? Yes, but not as well. He was sitting with his back to the window, but when he turned, I noticed that particularly memorable tattoo on his neck. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair. Maxwell wrote it down. What happened next? I looked for maybe 3 seconds. Not on purpose, I was just walking by. And then Elena opened her eyes and looked right at me. Our eyes met. I immediately turned away and walked on as if I hadn't seen anything. Picked up my package, returned to the car, went about my business. Thought it was just an awkward moment and that's all. But not all, Maxwell said quietly. No. The next day, Elena came to the branch. I saw her having a long conversation with her husband in his office. And 2 days later, on July 25th, I was called to see Carl, the director. He sat there grim, wouldn't look me in the eye. Said there was a complaint about me from a client. Supposedly, I was rude to someone on the phone. I didn't understand what he was talking about. I asked to see this complaint, to name the client. He said the complaint was verbal, but there were witnesses from the office who heard my conversation. And who are these witnesses? 2 women from accounting, both Elena's friends. They signed a report that they heard me being rude to a client on the phone on July 22nd. That was Monday. But on the 22nd, I wasn't at work at all. I had a day off. I told the director this, but he answered that I was probably confusing the dates. Maxwell clenched his teeth. Were you fired immediately? The next day, on July 27th, they gave me my final paycheck and employment record. I wanted to contest it, but I realized that an entire system was playing against me. The director, his wife, witnesses, HR. I was alone. What was the point? You didn't tell anyone about seeing Elena with her lover? No. I understood that's exactly why I was being fired, and if I started spreading it around, it would only get worse, Maxwell thought. The picture was forming clearly and unpleasantly. Elena Norwood was meeting with Siegel. Vanessa accidentally saw them. Elena got scared that the secret would be revealed and took measures, quickly, harshly, without unnecessary sentiment. Used her husband, his position, connections, fabricated evidence, and threw out the witness. But one question remained open. Vanessa, did you ever see my wife at the branch? Jenna Grayson? Vanessa thought. Yes, several times. She came to see Elena. They left somewhere together, to lunch, probably, or shopping. I drove them both a couple of times. Were they close? Seemed like it. They communicated very friendly, laughed, discussed something. Elena even once said that Mrs. Grayson helped her with some important matter, didn't specify what exactly. Maxwell felt cold spreading down his back. Jenna and Elena were friends. Elena was meeting with Siegel. Could Jenna have known about this connection? Or worse, could she herself have been part of this scheme? Vanessa, one more question. Did you see Siegel come to the branch? Yes. I didn't know then who it was, but I saw the man with the neck tattoo at the branch once. It was about 2 weeks before that incident in the parking lot. He came to see the director. They closed themselves in the office, talked for about 40 minutes. Then he left. Carl Norwood personally received him? Yes, and walked him to his car. It seemed to me then that they knew each other quite well. Maxwell wrote this down. So Siegel had direct contact with the branch director. Not through official channels, not through management meetings, but personally, one-on-one. Why would the CEO's partner meet with a branch head secretly from the CEO himself? The answer was obvious: to agree on something the CEO shouldn't know about. Vanessa, can you remember anything else strange? Any details that seemed unusual to you at the time? She frowned, remembering. There was one more thing. A week before the dismissal, one of the employees approached me. Lena. She worked as the director's assistant. We were smoking together outside, and she said to me in a half-whisper, "Vanessa, be careful. Something shady is going on here. The director is nervous. His wife is completely on edge. Better to keep your head down." I didn't think much of it then, but now I wonder, maybe she knew something. Is this Lena still working at the branch? I don't know. After the dismissal, I didn't communicate with anyone from there. Maxwell finished his coffee and looked Vanessa in the eyes. Vanessa, I want to offer you a deal. You don't spread this around. Don't discuss at all with anyone what you saw and what you told me. In exchange, I guarantee you protection and possibly reinstatement to work. Not at the branch, you'd be uncomfortable there, but at the head office or personally with me. Vanessa looked at him distrustfully. Why are you helping me? We don't even know each other. Because you told the truth, and because this truth might save my company from people who are trying to take it over. Maxwell spoke honestly, without embellishment. I don't know all the details yet, but I sense that someone close to me is playing against me, possibly even my wife. And you're the only person who saw what they wanted to hide. Vanessa was silent, then nodded. All right, I agree. But I don't want problems. I just want to work and live quietly. I promise, if you stay silent and help me, there won't be problems. They said goodbye. Vanessa left. Maxwell stayed in the cafe for a few more minutes, thinking over what he'd heard. Now he had specific dates, details, testimony written down. This would be enough for Owen to start digging deeper. Maxwell dialed the security chief's number. Owen, I met with the witness. I have exact dates and details. July 23rd, parking lot at Galleria Mall. Need surveillance recordings from the parking lot and adjacent streets. Gray Kia Rio taxi. Also check who came to the branch on July 10th to 11th. Look for Siegel's car. Understood. Anything else? Yes. Find out everything about the director's assistant at the branch, Lena. I'll clarify the last name later. She might have known more than she told colleagues. Will be done. Maxwell left the cafe and got in the car. Eric was already waiting for him. The company Mercedes had been fixed yesterday evening. Where are we going, Mr. Grayson? To the office. While the car drove through the morning city, Maxwell looked out the window and thought about how quickly the world that seemed solid collapses. Just 2 days ago, he was confident in his wife, in his partner, in his people, and now each of them could turn out to be a traitor. But Maxwell wasn't one to give up. He'd survived crises, attacks from competitors, and if someone decided they could interfere with the company through intrigue and betrayal, that someone was gravely mistaken. All that remained was to collect all the evidence. And then, the real game would begin. Security Chief Owen Malone appeared in Maxwell's office the next day at exactly noon. Maxwell valued him because Owen didn't jump to conclusions, worked only with facts, and never lied. Mr. Grayson, Owen closed the door behind him and put a tablet on the desk. What I found, you won't like. Speak, Maxwell nodded, preparing for the worst. I'll start with Vanessa Sinclair's dismissal. I pulled all the documents. Official grounds, gross violation of discipline, client complaint. But here's what's interesting. The complaint really was filed, but only in oral form. There are no written confirmations. But there is a report signed by 2 accounting employees, Olivia Cross and Sandra Drake. Both claim they heard Sinclair being rude to a client on the phone on July 22nd. And And on July 22nd, Sinclair was on sick leave. She had a day off. She provided a doctor's note after the dismissal, but then HR said it didn't matter since the report was already drawn up. Maxwell frowned. So they fabricated evidence. Yes, and very crudely. If Sinclair had gone to court, she would have easily won the case. But she didn't. Apparently understood that influential people were playing against her. And these two employees, Cross and Drake? Both are listed as Elena Norwood's friends, regularly go to lunch with her, celebrate holidays together. Essentially, her people in the branch. Maxwell nodded. Everything matched what Vanessa had told. What about the surveillance cameras? Owen turned on the tablet and turned it toward Maxwell. Parking lot at Galleria Mall, July 23, 2:20 p.m. Here's the recording. A black and white image from a surveillance camera appeared on the screen. Maxwell saw the parking lot, rows of cars. Owen fast-forwarded to the right moment and pressed pause. Here's the gray Kia Rio taxi. The license plate matches what I checked in the database. The car is registered to Alliance Taxi Service. And here's the woman getting in the back seat. Maxwell peered closer. The recording quality wasn't ideal, but the silhouette, hairstyle, way of moving. This was Elena Norwood. He'd seen her several times at corporate events, remembered her. And here's the man who's already in the car. Owen scrolled a bit more. When the taxi pulls away, you can see him turn. And here, if you enlarge it, Owen zoomed in on the image. On the man's neck, a tattoo was visible. Flames. Anton Siegel, Maxwell said quietly. Yes. I compared it with photos from the corporate database. 100% match. He has a distinctive tattoo, impossible to confuse, Maxwell thought. So it was true. His partner was meeting with the branch director's wife. Secretly, in a taxi, so as not to be seen. What else? He asked, opening his eyes. I checked entry-exit to the branch territory for July. On July 10th, Wednesday at 10 a.m., Siegel's car drove onto the territory, a black BMW X5. He spent 43 minutes in the building, then left. According to the access system, he went to the director's office. Carl Norwood received him personally? Yes, and the meeting wasn't on the schedule. I checked calendars. Neither Norwood nor Siegel had this meeting officially recorded. So they were meeting in secret. Looks like it. Maxwell stood and approached the window. The city below lived its life. People hurried about their business, not suspecting that in one of these high-rises a drama was unfolding. Owen, what about Jenna? Is there a connection between her and Elena Norwood? Owen nodded. There is. Very close. I pulled up Elena's corporate phone calls. She often called your wife. Plus, they regularly met. From video surveillance records, I see that Mrs. Jenna Grayson came to the branch at least 5 times in the past 2 months. Each time she spent from 1 to 3 hours there, mainly in the director's office or in the conference room with Elena. Why would my wife sit in a branch for 3 hours? I don't know that yet. But here's what's interesting. After each of her visits, Norwood made personnel decisions. Fired some, hired others, transferred to new positions. In total, 12 people changed at the branch in 2 months. 12? Yes. And they mainly fired old employees who had worked there even before Norwood became director. And in their places they hired new ones, on Elena's recommendation. Maxwell felt anger boiling inside. Jenna was interfering with his company's personnel matters. Through a friend, through the branch, but interfering. Why? To install her people? To control information? Owen, check all the new employees hired in the past 2 months at the branch. Who they are, where they came from, who recommended them. Pay special attention to those who have access to finances, documents, contracts. Already checking, Owen nodded. Preliminary data is this. 3 of them previously worked at companies where Siegel was either a co-owner or consultant. Maxwell turned sharply. What? Yes. 1 accountant, 1 lawyer, and 1 client relations manager. All three came on Elena Norwood's recommendation. All three had experience working with Siegel's companies. The picture was becoming clearer and more frightening. Siegel, through Elena, was installing his people in Maxwell's branch. Gradually, quietly, replacing old employees with new ones, those who were loyal not to Maxwell, but to Siegel. "This is preparation for a takeover," Maxwell said aloud. "Looks like it," Owen agreed. "They're creating within your company a structure that's under their control. When the time comes, these people will be in key positions and will be able to push through the necessary decisions." "What decisions?" "For example, transfer of assets, transfer of contracts, change of bank details, anything. If they have powers of attorney and access, they can do a lot." Maxwell returned to the desk and sat down. "What about powers of attorney? Are there any suspicious documents?" Owen scrolled through the tablet. "I requested a list of all powers of attorney issued in your name over the past year. Most are standard, ordinary, processed within the company, for lawyers, accountants, representatives to the tax office. But there's one strange one." "Which?" "A notarized power of attorney in your name to Anton Siegel, processed August 18th. According to it, he receives the right to sign contracts for pledge and encumbrance of the company's real estate." Maxwell frowned. "I didn't give such a power of attorney." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I never give Siegel the right to dispose of real estate without my personal consent. That's one of the key principles." "Then we have a problem." Owen turned the tablet around. "Because here's a scan of the power of attorney, and your signature is at the bottom." Maxwell took the tablet and looked carefully at the document. The power of attorney was properly processed, with a notary seal, and at the bottom indeed stood a signature very similar to his. But he hadn't signed this. He was certain. "This is a forgery," Maxwell said. "My signature, but not my hand." "Can you prove it?" "I can. I have a handwriting analysis we did for an insurance company 3 years ago. There are samples of my real signature there. We can compare." "Good. I'll organize the analysis. But even if it's a forgery, the question remains, how did they get a power of attorney with your forged signature?" "The notary should have verified identity," Maxwell thought. "Owen, check who came to Ms. Sherman on August 18th to process this power of attorney. Who was there instead of me?" "Already checking. According to the notary office records, on August 18th, a man came to Ms. Sherman who identified himself as Maxwell Grayson. He presented a passport, signed in the notary's presence. Ms. Sherman witnessed the signature." "She saw this person?" "Yes. I already contacted her. She said the man provided a passport, with your name and initials." "Someone impersonated me," Maxwell said slowly. "With a fake passport, or a real one that was stolen." "Is your passport with you?" Maxwell took out his wallet, checked. The passport was in place. "Yes, so they have a forgery." "Or someone close to you gave them access to documents," Owen added quietly. Maxwell looked at him. "Close ones. Wife. Jenna had access to his home office, to the safe, to documents. She knew where he kept his passport, where the seals were, where the office keys were. Could it be her?" "Owen, August 18th. Where was I that day?" Owen checked the calendar. "You were on a business trip, Boston, negotiations with suppliers. You flew out on the morning of the 17th, returned on the evening of the 19th. And Jenna?" "Mrs. Jenna Grayson was at home. According to security data, she didn't go anywhere those 2 days. So while Maxwell was on a business trip, someone used his absence and processed a fake power of attorney to Siegel. Someone who had access to his documents, someone who was in the house, and resembled him." Maxwell stood and paced the office. His head was buzzing from the information, from the betrayal, from realizing how deep this scheme went. "Owen, what can they do with this power of attorney?" "A lot. Pledge the company's real estate, process an encumbrance, get a loan secured by assets. If the power of attorney is genuine from the notary's point of view, Banks and registration authorities will accept it without question. So they can withdraw assets? Yes. Gradually, through pledges and loans, they can transfer all the company's property under Siegel's control or shell structures. Maxwell understood. So this wasn't just Siegel's romance with Elena. This was a planned scheme to take over the business. Siegel, Elena, possibly Jenna, they all acted in coordination, step by step preparing the ground, installing their people in the branch, removing unwanted witnesses, forging powers of attorney, getting access. And when everything was ready, they would strike, quickly, harshly, so that Maxwell wouldn't have time to react. But now he knew. Thanks to a chance meeting with a taxi driver, thanks to a car breakdown, thanks to this thin thread of truth, he learned about their plans. And now he had a chance to seize the initiative. "Owen," Maxwell said, returning to the desk, "I want you to do several things. First, organize a signature analysis on the power of attorney. I need an official conclusion that it's a forgery. Second, compile a dossier on all new branch employees, their connections, their past, their contacts with Siegel. Third, track all of Jenna's movements over the past month, who she met with, where she went, who she called. We'll be done. And one more thing, Owen. For now, not a word to anyone about our investigation, not even the lawyers. If they realize I know, they'll speed up their plans or go underground. I need them to feel safe." "Understood. I'll work quietly." "Good. Let's meet the day after tomorrow, Friday. By then, will you have all the data?" "I'll try." Owen left, and Maxwell remained alone in the office. He looked at the tablet, at the photo of Siegel and Elena in the taxi, and felt cold rage growing inside. They thought he was blind, that he wouldn't notice how they were betraying him, that they could steal his business through intrigue and forgery. But they were wrong. Maxwell Grayson wasn't one to surrender without a fight, and if they started a war, he would finish it. On his terms. Friday began with an unexpected call from Siegel. Maxwell was sitting in his office reviewing morning reports when his partner's name lit up on the phone screen. He picked up, trying to maintain his usual tone. "Anton, good morning." "Hey, Max." Siegel's voice sounded cheerful and friendly, as always. "Listen, I need to meet with you today. There's an important issue with the new contract." "What contract?" "Remember, we discussed equipment supplies from Germany? An interesting financing option came up there. But we need to decide quickly. The Germans are pushing." Maxwell frowned. They hadn't discussed any contract with Germany, at least not recently. "Anton, I don't recall such a conversation." "Come on, we talked about it 3 weeks ago at the meeting." Siegel spoke confidently, without a shadow of doubt. "You said then that the idea was good, but we needed to calculate the risks, so I calculated them. Let's meet today. I'll show you the numbers." Maxwell understood. So Siegel was trying to push through some deal they'd supposedly agreed on. Most likely, this was part of the plan, to process documents that would give him additional management levers. "All right," Maxwell said calmly. "Come to the office at 3. We'll discuss it." "Excellent. I'll be there." Maxwell hung up and immediately called Owen. "Siegel is requesting a meeting today at 3. He's talking about some contract with Germany that never existed. I think he'll try to pull something." "I'll be nearby," Owen answered briefly. "I already have the expert analysis materials ready. The signature on the power of attorney is a forgery, officially confirmed. I also compiled a dossier on the new branch employees. They're all connected to Siegel through previous workplaces or through recommenders." "Good. Come to me at 2:30, before the meeting with Siegel. Let's see what you have." At 2:30, Owen brought a thick folder of documents. "Here's the handwriting analysis." He laid an official conclusion on the desk. "The signature on the power of attorney from August 18th was not made by you. The expert established at least 7 signs of forgery: pressure, slant, letter connections. This can be used in court." "Excellent. What else?" Here's the dossier on branch employees. Accountant Grant Turner worked at Vector Trade Company, where Siegel was a minority shareholder. Lawyer Anna Bellows did an internship at a law firm that serves all of Siegel's companies. Manager Daniel Kelvin, son of Siegel's former partner in another business. Maxwell leafed through the documents, and the picture became clearer. Siegel had installed an entire network of his people in the branch. The accountant controls finances, the lawyer, documents, the manager, clients. If you add Director Norwood here, who acts on his wife's instructions, and Elena herself, who's friends with Jenna, you get a closed system. What about Jenna's movements? Owen pulled out another folder. Over the past month, Mrs. Jenna Grayson met with Elena Norwood 8 times. 4 meetings were in restaurants, 3 at the branch, 1 at your home. She also called Siegel twice, short conversations, 2-3 minutes each. Maxwell felt everything tighten inside. Jenna called Siegel, directly. Why would a wife call her husband's partner if there was no business necessity? When were these calls? The first, August 20th, the day after you returned from Boston. The second, September 3rd, Wednesday. Maxwell remembered. On August 20th, he'd indeed returned from the business trip in the evening, and the next day Jenna was home all day, said she wasn't feeling well. He'd even offered to call a doctor, but she refused. Now it was clear why. She was calling Siegel, most likely coordinating actions after processing the fake power of attorney. Owen, I need to catch them red-handed, Maxwell said. If Siegel tries to push through some deal today, I'll let him do it, but under control, so there's documentary confirmation of his actions. You want him to sign something incriminating? Exactly. Let him think I don't know anything. Let him act, and we'll record his every step. Risky. If he manages to push documents through registration, it'll be hard to cancel. I know, but we'll have proof of his criminal intent. That's more important. Owen nodded. All right. I'll organize hidden recording of the meeting. Camera and recorder. Everything will be recorded. Do it. At exactly 3 o'clock, Siegel entered Maxwell's office. He was dressed in an expensive suit, looked confident and calm. On his face, the usual friendly smile. Max, hi. Siegel extended his hand for a handshake. Maxwell shook it, trying not to show the tension. Sit down, Anton. I'm listening. Siegel took a folder of documents from his briefcase and spread them on the desk. So, here's the situation. The German company Schneider Technologies is ready to supply us with equipment worth 15 million euros. This is a production line for components that will pay for itself in 2 years. But there's a nuance. They require payment guarantees. What guarantees? Real estate pledge, specifically, the warehouse complex on the Interstate 95 corridor. It's on our company's balance sheet, estimated value, 20 million euros. We give the pledge, they supply the equipment, we pay it off in 2 years, the pledge is removed. Maxwell took the documents and started studying them. The contract looked solid. Seals, signatures, details of the German company. But something in it wasn't right. Anton, why does the contract state that the pledgor is not our company, but some firm called Alpha Holdings? Siegel didn't even blink. It's a technical structure. It's easier to push the deal through it, fewer tax risks. Alpha Holdings is our subsidiary. Everything's clean. I don't know such a subsidiary company. We registered it in July, remember? I told you about the need to create a structure for optimization. You approved. Maxwell hadn't approved. He'd heard nothing about this at all. But he didn't argue now. All right. And who signs on behalf of Alpha Holdings? Me. I have a power of attorney in your name. But Maxwell had given a power of attorney for completely different purposes, and he remembered this. And Siegel had that very fake power of attorney, which stated completely different rights and purposes. So Siegel was going to use it to process a pledge of real estate to a shell company. And if this went through, the warehouse complex would effectively come under Siegel's control. Anton, I need time to think, Maxwell said, setting the documents aside. This is a serious deal. I can't make a decision in 5 minutes. Siegel frowned. Max, the Germans are waiting for an answer by Monday. If we don't sign now, they'll go to competitors. Monday is only 3 days away. I'll study the documents, consult with lawyers, and give an answer. The lawyers already checked everything. Siegel tapped his finger on the papers. Here's their conclusion. Everything's clean. Maxwell took the conclusion. The signature at the bottom, Anna Bellows, that very lawyer from the branch who's connected to Siegel. I want the documents reviewed by Whitmore, Maxwell said, meaning his personal lawyer Peter Whitmore, whom he trusted completely. Whitmore is on vacation now, Siegel quickly answered. He left for 2 weeks, I checked. Maxwell knew this was a lie. Whitmore wasn't planning a vacation, so Siegel was trying to cut him off from reliable advisors. Then I'll wait for his return. Max, are you saying you don't trust me? Offense appeared in Siegel's voice. We've worked together so many years. Do I wish you harm? Maxwell looked him in the eyes. Siegel played his role excellently. Sincere offense, bewilderment, even slight anger. A real actor. I trust you, Anton. But this is my business, and I make decisions myself. Give me the weekend. I'll study everything and answer on Monday. Siegel was silent, then nodded. Fine, but understand, if we miss this deal, you won't get it back later. The Germans won't wait. I understand. Siegel collected the documents, leaving Maxwell copies, and left. When the door closed, Maxwell exhaled and pressed a button on the remote. Owen came out of the adjacent room, where he'd been watching and recording the entire meeting. Did you record everything? Yes. Video and audio of excellent quality, especially the moment where he talks about the power of attorney and about Alpha Holdings. Good. Now check this company, Alpha Holdings. Who are the founders? When was it registered? What accounts does it have? Owen opened his laptop and in a few minutes found the information. Alpha Holdings was registered July 25th. Founder, Anton Siegel, 100% share. CEO, also Siegel. Legal address, mass registration, 300 companies at one address. This isn't a subsidiary of our group? No. This is Siegel's personal company, in no way connected to your business. Maxwell smiled. So Siegel wanted to process a pledge of the warehouse complex to his personal company. Effectively, steal real estate worth 20 million euros. And the German company Schneider Technologies? Does it exist? Owen checked. Yes, it exists. But for the past 3 years it hasn't conducted active operations. The website isn't updated, contacts are old. Looks like a shell structure. So the entire contract is fiction. Yes. Siegel created the appearance of a deal to get a pledge on real estate using the fake power of attorney. Then he could say the deal fell through, the Germans changed their minds, but the pledge remained, and the warehouse complex would have passed into his ownership. Maxwell stood and approached the window. Siegel's plan was clever, but not perfect. Too many traces, too many inconsistencies. If Maxwell hadn't known the truth, he might have believed it. But now every word from Siegel looked like a lie. Owen, block all operations with the company's real estate. I'll give instructions to the legal department and the registration office. No transactions with our assets without my personal presence and signature. And we need to find the person who was at the notary's instead of me with my or a fake passport. Will be done. And one more thing. Tomorrow, Saturday, I want to hold an emergency meeting with key people. Invite Whitmore, Chief Accountant Somerset, head of the legal department. Everyone I can trust. We'll discuss strategy. And Siegel? Don't invite Siegel. Let him think I'm studying his documents. And in the meantime, we'll prepare a counterstrike. Owen nodded and left. Maxwell remained alone. He looked at the city, at the sunset sky, and thought about how quickly everything changes. Just a week ago, he lived confident that his world was solid, and now this world was cracking at the seams. But Maxwell wasn't going to give up. And no one, not Siegel, not Elena, not even Jenna, would take from him what belonged to him. It was time to go on the offensive. Saturday turned out to be intense. Maxwell gathered in his office 4 people he trusted unconditionally: Owen Malone, lawyer Peter Whitmore, chief accountant Ellen Somerset, and head of the legal department Ian Zimmerman. All of them had been with him from the very beginning, when the company was just emerging. Maxwell laid out all the materials before them: camera recordings, signature analysis, dossiers on branch employees, the fake power of attorney, the fraudulent contract with the German company. "So, friends," he began when everyone had studied the documents. "Here's the situation. My partner Anton Siegel, together with the branch director's wife Elena Norwood, and possibly with my wife Jenna, were preparing to take over the company. They installed their people, forged powers of attorney, tried to withdraw assets. The question is, how do we stop this?" Peter Whitmore, a gray-haired man with a penetrating gaze, was first to speak. "Mr. Grayson, we have 2 paths. The first, criminal. We go to the police with a statement about document forgery, fraud, abuse of authority. They open a case, Siegel gets arrested, an investigation begins. But it's long, noisy, and the company's reputation will suffer. And the second path? Civil law. We act through the courts and corporate mechanisms: protective measures, prohibition on transaction registration, exclusion of Siegel from the participants, property division. It's quieter, faster, and we control the process." Maxwell nodded. "I'm for the second path. I don't want the company to become a topic in crime news. What needs to be done?" Whitmore opened his notebook. "First, we file a lawsuit to recognize the power of attorney as invalid. We have the expert analysis. That's a strong argument. Simultaneously, we file protective measures, prohibition on any registration actions with the company's real estate. Second," Ellen Somerset picked up, "we block all financial operations in which Siegel participates. I'll give instructions to the banks. Any payments and transfers he initiates must go through my personal approval. Third," Ian Zimmerman joined in, "we revoke all active powers of attorney in Siegel's name. He'll lose the right to sign documents on behalf of the company. And we conduct an internal audit of all deals he's concluded over the past 6 months." Owen Malone added, "Fourth, we fire all branch employees connected to Siegel: Turner, Bellows, Kelvin. They're his agents of influence. They're dangerous." "And the branch director Norwood?" Maxwell asked. "Norwood also gets fired," Owen said harshly. "He acted under his wife's pressure, but that's no excuse. He signed fake documents, fired honest employees. He can't be trusted." Maxwell nodded in agreement. "Good. We launch everything Monday. And now, a personal question. My wife. What to do about her?" Peter Whitmore looked at him with sympathy. "Mr. Grayson, if Mrs. Jenna participated in the scheme, you need to act decisively. Talk to her, and then draw conclusions." The meeting lasted another 2 hours. They discussed every step, every risk, every detail. When everyone dispersed, Maxwell remained alone in the office. He looked at the stack of documents and understood that tomorrow a war would begin. A real one, without rules or mercy. On Sunday evening, Maxwell returned home late. Jenna was sitting in the living room, leafing through a magazine. When he entered, she looked up and smiled. "Where have you been all day? I called. You didn't pick up." "Working," Maxwell answered shortly, taking off his jacket. "On Sunday?" She frowned. "You promised we'd spend weekends together." Maxwell looked at her. Beautiful, well-groomed, confident woman. His wife of 8 years. Jenna didn't want children, said it would interfere with her career, freedom, life. Now he looked at her and saw a stranger. A person who had betrayed him. "Jenna, we need to talk," he said. "About what?" "About us. About our marriage." She set aside the magazine. Alarm flashed in her eyes. "What happened?" "I know about you and Siegel. About Elena. About the scheme with the branch." Jenna went pale. For several seconds she was silent, then exhaled and looked up. How do you know? Doesn't matter. What matters is I know. She laughed, shortly, angrily. So what now? You going to throw me out? Depends on what you tell me. What exactly do you want to know? How long has this been going on? And don't dodge, please, don't pretend. I know everything. Maxwell described in detail that he knew about all of Siegel's machinations and his connection with Elena and their friendship. He showed her the photo of their kiss in the taxi, the number of their contacts. The only thing, tell me, who was at the notary's instead of me? If you don't tell me, I'll find out anyway, but then I'll file a police report about your participation in this crime. All right. She stood, walked around the room. A year. This has been going on a year. Instead of you, Siegel hired a made-up actor with a fake passport. Why? Maxwell asked. What were you lacking? You were never home. You looked at me like a piece of furniture, like a mop or nightstand. Maxwell exhaled. We're getting divorced. Then I demand half. Business, real estate, accounts. We divide everything in half. You won't get it, Maxwell said calmly. I have evidence of your participation in the scheme against the company. That's bad faith behavior. The court will take it into account. Jenna stopped and looked at him with hatred. You think you're so smart? Do you even understand who you've gotten involved with? Siegel will crush you. He has connections, money, people. You're nothing to him. We'll see. Maxwell turned to leave. Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce. Pack your things. This is my house, she shouted after him. Was yours. Not anymore. Maxwell left the living room and went upstairs to the bedroom. Jenna remained downstairs, and he heard her talking on the phone, quickly, nervously, most likely calling Siegel or Elena, warning them they'd been exposed. He took his phone and called his lawyer. I talked to my wife. File for divorce with simultaneous demand for protective measures. Prohibition on removal of property, freezing of accounts, prohibition on disposing of business shares. Otherwise, she might try to take half in the division. Does she have a right to half? Formally, yes, this is jointly acquired property. But we can prove that the business was created before the marriage and she didn't participate in its development. Plus, her bad faith behavior, participation in the scheme against you, is grounds for reducing her share. How much can she get in the end? If we build the defense competently, half of the jointly acquired property, the business will remain yours. Maxwell exhaled. He'd bought the house before marriage. Let her take the property, furniture, clothes. The main thing, maintain control over the company. Maxwell launched a mechanism that was impossible to stop. On Monday morning, the operation began. At 9 a.m., Peter Whitmore filed an application for protective measures with the court. Maxwell revoked from the notary all his powers of attorney in Siegel's name. Soon, the court imposed an arrest on all transactions with the company's real estate. At 10 a.m., Ellen Somerset sent notifications to banks about blocking any operations initiated by Siegel. At 11, Ian Zimmerman sent Siegel an official letter about revocation of all powers of attorney. At noon, Owen Malone served dismissal notices to Turner, Bellows, and Kelvin. All three were shocked, tried to object, but the company's lawyers acted precisely. Violations of labor discipline, conflict of interest, loss of trust. Carl Norwood received a dismissal notice at 1 p.m. He came to the head office, tried to explain himself to Maxwell, but Maxwell refused to receive him. Tell him I acted under pressure, Norwood told the guard at the office doors. That's no excuse, the guard answered coldly and escorted the former branch director to the exit. Anton Siegel showed up at 3 p.m. He burst into Maxwell's office without knocking, his face red with anger. What are you doing? He yelled. You blocked all my accounts, revoked the powers of attorney, fired my people. Your people shouldn't be in my company, Maxwell answered calmly, not getting up from the desk. I'm your partner. Was. Not anymore. I'm buying out your share. Here's the independent appraiser's valuation. Maxwell handed him a document. $30 million. That's a fair price. Siegel grabbed the paper, ran his eyes over it, and threw it on the desk. My share is worth 3 times more. Was worth. Before you tried to steal my real estate through a fake contract and forged power of attorney. Now I've filed in court. If you don't agree to the buyout voluntarily, we'll go through the court and police, and then you'll get nothing at all, because I'll prove your fraud. Siegel stood, breathing heavily. In his eyes were anger, helplessness, rage. You'll regret this, he rasped. No, Maxwell shook his head. You'll regret it. You have 3 days to think. Either you sign the buyout agreement, or we meet at the police station. Choose. Siegel turned and left, slamming the door. Maxwell watched him leave and felt relief. The worst was behind him. What came next? A matter of technique. A week later, Siegel signed the agreement. He didn't want police and court proceedings that would reveal his schemes to the entire business community. He got $30 million, but lost access to a business that could have brought in hundreds of millions. Jenna also agreed to divorce. Her lawyers tried to negotiate, but Whitmore was relentless. Either a decent settlement and quiet divorce, or court with full disclosure of her participation in the scheme. Jenna chose the first. She got a 1-bedroom apartment, a car, and monetary compensation, and disappeared from Maxwell's life. Elena Norwood also suffered. Her husband filed for divorce when he learned about the romance with Siegel, and Vanessa Sinclair received an offer she couldn't refuse. On Friday, 2 weeks after the operation began, Maxwell invited her to his office. Vanessa, I want to thank you, he said when she entered. Without you, I wouldn't have learned the truth, couldn't have protected my company. Vanessa smiled shyly. I just told what I saw. You did more. You weren't afraid to tell the truth, even though you'd already been punished for it once. Therefore, I want to offer you a job. Not at the branch, but here, at the head office, as my personal driver. Vanessa looked at him in surprise. Personal driver? Yes. Good salary, benefits package, company housing if needed. You'll drive only me, no side jobs, and I guarantee that no one will fire you unjustly again. Vanessa was silent, then nodded. I agree. Thank you, Mr. Grayson. Thank you, Vanessa. They shook hands. Maxwell looked out the window at the city. The storm had passed. Traitors punished, company saved, life goes on. He'd lost his wife, lost his partner, but kept the main thing, his business, his honor, his freedom. And beside him now was a person who could be trusted. Vanessa Sinclair, a random taxi driver who became his driver. Maxwell Grayson learned a lesson. Betrayal comes from where you don't expect it. But truth is always stronger than lies if you have the courage to fight for it.